We are learning Mishnah Sotah, Parak Aleph, Chapter 1, Mishnah Hey, Mishnah 5. Im Amra Tameani. If let's say the previous Mishnah was talking about what we try to do to convince her to admit her guilt. Mm-hmm. So if she is guilty, that is. Im Amra Tameani. If let's say she confesses and she says, I am defiled, that means she did commit adultery. She confessed to committed adultery. Sheveres Ksuba, the Yotzes. She writes to her husband a receipt for her ksuba, and she leaves. Now, a woman who commits adultery loses her ksuba. You know, ksuba is something that a husband guarantees to his wife, X amount of money, if he divorces her, if he dies. But if she commits adultery, she loses it. Now, when she commits adultery, she's also forbidden to ever stay with her husband. They can never cohabit again. So he has to go ahead and give her a divorce. But he doesn't have to give her a ksuba because of the fact that she committed adultery. Now, what's going to stop her from going again and collecting the ksuba? Afterwards, she'll pull out the ksuba and she'll say, "Look, here's my ksuba, and we're divorced. He didn't pay me." So the answer, the answer is like this: if we're talking about a case, now there's different places. Our custom now is everybody writes a ksuba, but in times of the Mishna, there were places that wrote a ksuba, a document. And other places that didn't write a document. I mean, everybody knew everybody knew you had to pay ksuba. And I don't know about any kind of specific details or not what they did in that kind of situation. But at least basic ksuba, and maybe more than that, I'm not sure. But at least the basic ksuba, they didn't write it down. Okay, well, if you didn't write it down, and let's say it was paid, what's going to stop her from coming back and going to a different, let's say, Bezdin and saying that was never paid? So the answer is, in other circumstances where she gets paid her ksuba, and there's never a ksuba document, what does she got to do? She writes a receipt. I have received my ksuba. So that's what the Mishna is referring to when it say you write a receipt. If we're talking about a place where the practice is to write a ksuba, then in order for her to collect her ksuba, she has to present it. Because typically what happens if she gets her ksuba is that the husband takes the ksuba from her, or his heirs take back the ksuba from her, and they tear it up. So she has no way to go in and collect again. So in a case where they write a ksuba, so then, they take the ksuba and they tear it up, and then she'll never be able to collect it again, or try to collect it again. In a situation where they don't write a ksuba, and without a ksuba, she could go to Beis Din and demand her ksuba. In that situation here, where she doesn't get a ksuba, she writes a receipt to say, I don't know if she writes it, I received it, but, my husband is no more obligated to pay the ksuba to me. Basically, she's lost her rights to the ksuba. That's what she writes in the receipt, and she won't be able to collect it again. All right, so that is if we come to the point where she says, I am impure. But now, Vim Amra Tahirani, let's say at this stage, she says, I'm Tahar. So again, at this stage, we took her to the Beis Din Hagadol, to the Sanhedrin of Yerushalayim. They tried saying certain things to her to convince her to confess, and she's not confessing. She's saying Tahirani. She's saying I'm pure, and she's also not saying I'm not drinking. She could say that, at this point, if she turns around and doesn't admit that she's been defiled, but she says I'm not drinking. We know that's also going to stop the whole process. But that's not what's happening here. So v'marma Tahirani, if she says I am tahar. Oh, now let me back up a second. One more thing. If she committed adultery, right? She admitted to committing adultery. Do they kill her? Do they practice capital punishment on her?
Yeah, isn't it?
No. You know why? There's no witnesses she committed adultery. She's admitting she committed adultery. Okay. There's witnesses she went into seclusion, but there's no witnesses that there was an adultery. The whole purpose of giving her to drink is to verify what happened. Now, if she admits it, okay, so we don't go through with the process, but you don't give a person capital punishment based on their admitting. So therefore, she doesn't get killed.
Okay.
Now, if let's say she says, I am pure, we then take her to the eastern gate that is at, or is opposite, the opening called the gate of Nicanor. Now, let's take a look at this picture for a second. Okay, here is the Azara. That's the Azara, called the courtyard, the Azara of the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, where the Sanhedrin sat was over here at this, and they had a chamber in the wall, and they were basically in this area of the Azara. Now, she now has to go in order for the process to continue, meaning when we're going to raise the water and give it to drink. That happens here at the Shai Nicanor, at the Nicanor gate, which is opposite the Holy of Holies. That's called, it has to be Lifnei Hashem, the pasuk says. You do it before Hashem. So before Hashem means opposite the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Okay? Now, the Mishnah, when it says we take her through the eastern gate, means, if you can see these arrows, she was here. This is where she started. And he takes her all around to the eastern gate. There would have been a shorter route to get straight to the Shai Nicanor. There could have been a straighter route. I don't know if the straighter route would have been between going through the Azari itself. I don't know, maybe that's what it would have been. Mm-hmm. I would assume there should have been other openings on the other sides, but the point is there was a shorter route to get to the Shai Nicanor, and they purposely took her around. Why? Because actually they're trying to fatigue her. Mm-hmm. They were trying to kind of get her to get tired, to get her mood to change, and that would kind of get her to admit. These are all points of getting her to admit. Saves her life, and it prevents Hashem's name of being erased. And the Mishnah adds that this is where, so again, they bring her to the east gate that is opposite the opening of Shai Nicanor, and Shai Nicanor Shasha Mashkanas HaSaitis. It is at Shai Nicanor at the Nicanor gate that there they give the Saitis to drink, as I said before, because it has to be Lifnei Hashem, before Hashem. Umetaharin Hayoldos. And the process of purifying a woman who gave birth would also go through her completing her process of tahara. A woman who gives birth has X amount of days that she has to wait before she becomes pure. She becomes impure from giving birth, and after the point of time that state of impurity is over, she has to bring a set of karbanos. She has to bring a set of sacrifices. Now, every person has to be present, so to speak. Every person has to oversee their own offering. How's she going to do that? The answer is she does that. Now again, she's not fully pure yet. So what she does is she stands in this whole big black area here. Well, that shouldn't be a black area. This bordered black area, the larger area, that's called the Ezras Nashim, the women's courtyard. Okay, and therefore that was a place that she was able to enter. And if she stood at Shai Nicanor, the carbon was taking place in the courtyard, but she could be, that's called being present. She could see into the courtyard where the sacrifice is being offered, and there she therefore fulfills that obligation of being present at her carbon, at her sacrifice. And someone stricken with saras, as we mentioned many times before, when they come to the point that they are healed, and they have a process of purification for 8 days, and then at the 8th day they bring a set of karmanis, and there too the Torah says that the person who is becoming pure has to be lifnei Hashem, has to be before Hashem, and therefore again you stand at the Shai Nicanor, obviously the Kodesh HaKadoshim. That's called being lifnei Hashem, being before Hashem. Now, the kohen oiches b'begodeha. A kohen grabs hold of her clothes by the neckline and pulls at them. He's actually trying to disgrace her by uncovering her chest. Now, doesn't say how far down the chest. It just says uncovers the chest. This is all part of embarrassing her and again breaking her down. Now, so he grabs her by that part of her clothing. If they tear in little bits, meaning it takes a lot of tears to get it. If it takes niframu, and if it was a large tear, it's a large tear, meaning whatever kind of tearing it takes to come to that point, sleep until he reveals her heart. Okay, so this is again a way of embarrassing her, disgracing her. The Seiser is Sarah, and he undoes her hair, meaning not only does he uncover her hair, which is an embarrassment. If it's braided, he undoes the braid. This is all part of making her look unkempt, and therefore again making her kind of breaking her down. That again she should admit if she is guilty, or to stop the process. Now, I just want to point out that it doesn't say that it doesn't say the kohen is looking anywhere when he's doing it, right? And it doesn't say, exactly. It doesn't say how far down till her heart. It doesn't say how far down he's going and exactly how much he's revealing. But he's clearly revealing part of her chest. This is again part of the embarrassment. And just to add a little bit more explanation here, if at the end of the day she was pure, she didn't commit adultery, she went through a lot for no reason, it would seem. But the explanation that they bring down here from Rashi is, and I'll read it to you. Even though she might not have committed adultery, it is not inappropriate to disgrace her in this way because she committed an immoral act by spending time alone with a man after her husband warned her not to. She's not innocent. He warned her not to go into seclusion, and she did it. That was immoral on itself. It's not adultery necessarily, but it's immoral on itself. And therefore, even if at the end of the day she comes out vindicated from adultery, she still acted in a very inappropriate way, and therefore that is enough of a reason to go through this public disgrace. Okay, so that's what the Tanna Kama says. Rabbi Yehuda says, if that part of her body was attractive, he did not reveal it. And if she had beautiful hair, he didn't undo it. Why was that? The explanation given is, Rabbi Yehuda is concerned that if the Sotah survives the test of drinking the water, young Kohanim who saw the ritual might desire her. Right? The young Kohanim are going to get aroused. They may go after her. To prevent this, if her chest is attractive, remains covered. If her hair is attractive, remains tied up. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda said there are certain things that this idea of how far we disgrace her is going to depend on the situation. Have a wonderful day, wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.